There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Matt Davis. He is the Director of Content and Digital Marketing at Allocadia. Matt, how are you doing today?
Just great, thanks. How about you, James?
I am wonderful. So, Matt, we were talking offline, and I'm really excited about this topic because we get a lot of people asking us, they tell us all the time, James, I'm on a smaller team. Do you have any episodes that are oriented to the companies that, or the marketers that are working with smaller teams? And this is exactly what this episode is going to be focused on. We're going to be talking about 3 lessons that you've learned doing content marketing with a small but mighty team. And just in hearing what some of those lessons were offline, I think this is going to be incredibly powerful content. The ideas that you were sharing, I don't hear a lot of people talking about them. So this is going to be fresh for a lot of the folks listening to this. But before we dive into that, Matt, I'd love for you to give a little bit of context to our listeners and just share a little bit about Allocadia and what you guys are up to over there.
Sure. So at Allocadia, we are a B2B software organization, and we sell to marketers. And what we actually do is something called marketing performance management. And what we mean by that is we help large marketing teams, enterprise marketing teams, manage their marketing investments. So all the money that they're spending in the programs that they're doing, and then also figure out what those investments are actually doing for them, looking at their results. So altogether, we call that marketing performance management. And then we also use the phrase running marketing, or running the business of marketing. So that's what we help marketing teams do.
I love it. All right, Matt. So we've got a lot to cover here. So I want to just jump right in. As we were talking about kind of the lessons that you've learned doing content marketing with a relatively small team, the first thing you mentioned was having a balance between inbound content that you're going to be using to try to drive inbound interest versus content that you need for sales enablement, to empower your sales team to close more deals faster. Talk to us about, what do you mean by needing a balance there? What has that looked like in your world?
Sure. So I've been at Allocadia now about 3.5 years or just over, and I've seen our company grow from about 20 people when I arrived to now about 90. And our marketing team grow from just 2 or 3 when I arrived now to still on the small side, but we've grown a lot within the larger organization now to being a team of about 8. But when I got here, there was definitely not, we just had I was the second marketing hire, so we just had a very sort of minimum viable marketing team, and my colleague was doing a fantastic job as a team of 1, but there was definitely this debt in marketing content, and that's what I came to try to do. But there was actually 2 gaps to fill at the very beginning when I got here. I was hearing from the marketing leadership and the leadership team generally that we need some great marketing content to fuel our inbound engine and to attract top of the funnel interest and all that good stuff. And there was plenty of ideas. But then there was also the sales team saying, we need content too. We need things like standard sales decks and demo scripts and basic sell sheets and things like that. And throughout that first couple of years here at Allocadia, I really felt that there was a very healthy, but also it was important to strike that balance. There was a push and pull going on between these 2 demands on the marketer's time. And this is something it's really unique to a smaller team, especially in a B2B marketing organization, which I understand probably a lot of the folks out there listening might be part of. Yeah. Because in a larger team, you'd have an entire squad of marketing folks that are just putting out sales enablement content or content that the sales team can use. Then you'd have a totally separate team doing the top of the funnel stuff.
Yep.
So I found it was just a balancing act to get this right. And I don't have a percentage like 80-20 or anything like that, although that's probably not a bad one. Don't have one of those to recommend, but I did find that there was a couple of keys to getting that balance right. These are lessons that I sort of learned the hard way over the last few years. The first key was figure out what is just the baseline that the sales team can be happy and functional with. If you get to an organization and you find, as I did, that there was a dearth of good sales content, there was some, but there was much more needed and there was a lot of updates needed, do that stuff first. I have a colleague who says one of my favorite sayings about marketing is that, or just about organizations in general, is that you have two types of roles in a company like ours, or really any company, and that is people who are in sales and people who are in sales support. And if, as I did, I came and I found that sellers were selling, they were selling with what they had, but they needed more, that was actually first priority, but I didn't want to go too far in that direction. So just figuring out a few core pieces, producing those, and then switching focus to primarily producing the marketing content. Because after all, we have marketing qualified lead targets to meet as well. That was key number one.
Got it. And that came from just having conversations with those sellers and kind of across multiple conversations determining, okay, they all said some variation of these three different assets. And so these are going to be the three that I focus on. And then I'm going to divert my efforts to creating the inbound content.
Absolutely. So if I've heard 10 requests and I go back to the sales organization, again, small company benefit is that the sales organization is not so huge that it takes weeks and weeks to have these conversations. But of these 10, which are the three that you would have me do? Applying some of my own judgment there as well, but really just negotiating that.
All right. So, and this next lesson being, you were about to get into it and then I cut you off.
No problem. So the second one was almost what we were just saying. It was actually just about communication. So one of the sort of the tips that I picked up from our CMO here at Allocadia was all about communication with the sales team on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, I promised to the sales organization that based on the needs that I've heard, I will create for you these three things. It's not going to boil the ocean, and you're still going to be wanting more after you get these, but then actually delivering them over the course of the quarter, even if it's at the very end. Yeah. And we have that conversation again at the beginning of the new quarter, and you say, by the way, don't forget that here are the new pieces that we saw last quarter. Here's what I delivered for you. And here is my promise to make more for you in the future. And so certainly logging all the requests, making the sales team feel heard, but establishing that track record of creating things for the sales team, it actually went a long way towards our sales and marketing alignment as well, I'd say. So that was the second key, is really just communication, fulfilling promises, and delivering on those.
But you would say that you probably spent the bulk of your time working on the inbound content, kind of almost like an 80-20 mix is what you ended up doing?
That's probably how it shook out, I would say. The default position, of course, for us as marketers is to want to put all of our time into marketing's own goals. And I don't think that's a great default to have. I think we should have more of a bias towards helping sellers sell. But oftentimes, we're here to do content marketing. It's in many of our titles. Yeah. So it's really important just to carve that out. And one important thing to note here, James, is that now with ABM being a super prevalent approach in the industry, there's a lot of approaches there that rely on highly personalized content, and that's not what I'm speaking about today. I'm thinking more just the basic stuff. ABM is a different beast.
Got it. Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Matt. So this next lesson that we're going to talk about, so the first one being, finding that balance between inbound content and sales enablement content. The second one being the importance of doing the foundational work, particularly with folks on a small team. In your case, you were the second person in the marketing organization. And so talk to us about the foundational work that needed to be done before you could jump into just starting to create this inbound content and the sales enablement content.
Sure. So this was another lesson that I really learned over the course of my time here at Allocadia. And just to say that, I don't have this absolutely figured out. It's something we're still working on. But if I could go back to when I first joined and give myself this recommendation, it would be doing the foundational work first, as tempting as it is to just jump right into content production mode. And what I mean by foundational work are things like your voice, your company's voice. Is it conservative? Is it jovial? Is it, edgy? Is it weird? One company that has done this spectacularly well, is amazingly consistent despite their size, is MailChimp. And I recommend everybody to go check out MailChimp's style guide. It's amazingly concise. And in about 8 statements, MailChimp has defined what their brand sounds like. So they say we're fun but not silly, we're confident but not cocky, etc. And as we grow in content marketing organizations, more and more people, internal and external, are going to be writing and representing our companies. And there have been a few times when hired an external writer, been really excited about what they've come back with, but come to the very hard realization that this does not sound like Allocadia. And without some kind of guidance or document about our voice, I can't really go back to them and know what to switch. It just becomes this manual sentence by sentence process of adjustment. That's one example of foundational work. Another is our ideal customer profile. And there's many, many reasons to create that ideal customer profile, that ICP, other than just for the sake of content marketing. But that is something I would invest time in earlier, knowing exactly who we're talking to, not just personas like, Susie Marketer and kind of her company size and things like that, but an even more targeted, we're speaking to somebody in this role, in this industry, in this size of organization with this background, and maybe 2 or 3 of those, and having that persona in mind for everything you write. So important. And something we're still working on refining, to be honest.
Got it. Okay, so Matt, this third piece, so we've talked about the balance between inbound and sales enablement content. We've talked about doing the foundational work, like defining your voice, really honing in on your ICP, creating a style guide similar to what MailChimp did. That's kind of that guiding light for what that voice looks like. I don't know if in that style guide they have their ICP in there, but some sort of documentation of those things, doing that foundational work before getting started. And this last lesson that we're going to talk about is this idea of squeezing more juice out of your existing content instead of defaulting to just always thinking you need to create more. This is something, as we were talking about offline, was super intriguing to me. Talk to us about what this has looked like for you at Allocadia.
Sure. I think in content marketing generally, we just have this sort of implication, this assumption that we always need to be churning out more content. And a lot of the time that's true. But one thing that we did here at Allocadia, which I think was really valuable, was last summer, I guided a process where we sort of stopped making new content for a little while. We had a pretty good library of content by that time, and we addressed a couple of pain points related to more the accessibility of our content. We've got all this content by now. This was a few years into my role here. And the question was, is it all getting used? And is the sales team finding it? And in a lot of cases, the answer was no. Yeah. I had sellers coming to me saying, hey, where do we keep our ebooks? I'm thinking like, oh, well, shouldn't you know that by now? And honestly, there was a bunch of reasons why it's totally plausible and reasonable that they didn't. And so I think a lot of our content was dying on the vine. And so I started a project to try to think of how to surface up our existing content. There was so much good stuff, blog posts, longer form, and all of it that wasn't being used to the max. And I have a few examples of how we did that.
Yeah, you should go ahead and share those.
Mm-hmm. So one of the ones was making a much, much better content gallery. And we used a tool called Uberflip that some listeners might be familiar with for that. And it just made our content so much easier to find. We can tag it however we want for internal use or external use. And our content library is just now so much richer because it's divided up by type and by stage and by audience and all these different ways. And that's useful for our sellers and for our website visitors, etc. That's one. Another is really retraining the sales team on what do we have, when is it usable, and what is our general approach to content. Not just new sellers who come in the door, but existing ones too. I think there's a natural process of sort of veering away from what we've learned just as we get more experience. And for sellers, that was particularly true. So kind of retraining them, and it's a great chance to have a conversation about content anyway.
Does that retraining happen on a regular basis? Is that a quarterly thing that you guys are doing?
Yeah, for us, it's been a tag on to that quarterly conversation that I mentioned earlier.
Got it.
So carving out that time, just when oftentimes here in Allocadia, we have what we call quarterly business reviews with the sales and marketing team. So there's this natural time. But for anyone listening who doesn't have that already carved out, I'd recommend doing it.
Love it.
And the last thing I'd say as far as squeezing more juice out of marketing content is with a tool like Uberflip in particular, they have a function in that product where a seller can cherry pick a few different pieces of marketing content and serve up a prospect with a single page with the prospect's name in the URL, for example, allocadia.com/Acme, and it's just got the seller's face and a few hand-selected pieces of content. And it doesn't matter whether those are new content pieces or old. And they're not gated, and it's specifically for that person. And that has been a very powerful tool for us. And as a content manager, it's great for me because they're getting more. These are a brand new pair of eyes on something we've made, maybe a year, 2 years ago, which is still pretty relevant. So those are all some examples of how.
Those are super practical examples, Matt. I appreciate you sharing all of that. So this has been incredible, Matt. If there's somebody listening, maybe they want to connect with you further on this. What's the best way for them to connect with you, and what's the best way for them to learn more about Allocadia?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at Matt_Vancouver. And for Allocadia, we're at allocadia.com, and on Twitter at Allocadia. Very simple.
Awesome, Matt. Well, thank you again so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, so I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, James.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you'd like to connect with B2B executives from all over the world, make sure to join our private Facebook community. There are some incredible conversations happening inside this group. To join, visit b2bgrowthshow.com/FB.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.